Ted Cruz is continuing to do a media tour since he threw his hat into the ring to run for president in 2016. And this time, he shoved his foot in his mouth on the issue of climate change. He said the following, quote, "I'm a big believer that we should follow the science," sure you are, "and follow the evidence. If you look at global warming alarmists, they don't like to look at the actual facts and the data. The satellite data demonstrate that there has been no significant warming whatsoever for 17 years. Now, that's a real problem for the global warming alarmists, because all those computer models on which this whole issue is based predicted significant warming, and yet the satellite data show it ain't happening." He continues, "Anyone who actually points to the evidence that disproves their apocalyptical claims," is that even a fucking word? Isn't it apocalyptic? Apocalyptical, like it's a workout machine mixed together with the apocalypse. He says, "Apocalyptical claims, they don't engage in reasoned debate. What do? They scream, 'You're a denier.' They brand you as a heretic. Today, the global warming alarmists are the equivalent of the flat earthers. It used to be that it is accepted scientific wisdom the earth is flat. And this heretic named Galileo was branded as a denier." Okay, it was never accepted scientific fact that the earth is flat. It was just what people believed. There's no science involved in thinking the earth is flat, so let's get that clear. Also, leave it to Ted Cruz to get that wrong, just a minor side point in his rant. Galileo's controversy was over the earth revolving around the sun, not the flat earth. It was Aristotle who was the first on the spherical earth issue. Of course, Ted Cruz. Well, what is he going to do? He pulls a Louis Gohmert, gets everything dead wrong and then some. But the bigger point, you're wrong. Galileo, in your analogy here, was pro-science, and today, scientists are pro-science. And the scientists disagree with you. So in your own analogy, you're the bad guy. In your own analogy, you're the religious establishment. You're the people who disagree with Galileo. I always find it amazing that these guys can flip the issues in their head, because it's so obvious that the way they perceive it is total bullshit. It's like we see anti-gay people who always allude to, like, Martin Luther King Jr. Like, we need a civil rights movement for Christians, for anti-gay Christians. You think that that you guys are more like Martin Luther King and the civil rights people than the people fighting for civil rights, fighting for more rights for gay people. You have it backwards. You're Bull Connor in your analogy, you idiots. It's the same thing with this guy. So, also, let's go a step further here and look at the actual science. Scientific American, headline, quote, 2014, officially the hottest year on record. Oops. But it's okay, guys. Take Ted Cruz's word over it because he says so. Why the fuck would anybody take your word over it? Who should you trust, Scientific American or Ted Cruz? I got more. Time, quote, "This was the warmest winter on record." That's a recent headline. So should we trust Ted Cruz over Time and Scientific American and all the other evidence? Absolutely not. Now, also, let's take a look at the chart from the NOAA on global temperature and carbon dioxide. Yeah, climate change isn't happening. I'm sure, Ted. Should I trust detailed charts from the NOAA or you? Yeah, I think I know who I'm going to trust. And also, let's take a look at the chart from the meta-analysis on all peer-reviewed climate studies from 1991 to 2012. We've shown this on air before many times. There were 13,950 studies, peer-reviewed studies, on climate change from 91 to 2012. Only 24 of them reject global warming. So think about what that means, man. That's like, what, 99.8, 99.9% of all the peer-reviewed studies are like, yeah, climate change is happening, and it's largely man-made. So, dude, you're just dead wrong. And also, to address one of his other points there, he spoke about the Arctic ice, and this is something I've heard on Fox News before. This is something I've heard in many right-wing circles, where they say, satellite imagery shows that there's more Arctic ice now, so it's global cooling, if anything. Meh, there's no global warming. Yeah, but the only problem with that is, just like the recent Vice documentary on this showed, the increase in ice in the Arctic, number one, is always seasonal. So it goes with the seasons. It always changes as time goes by in a relatively predictable fashion. But here's the issue. What you're looking at is sea ice. That's not the same as land ice. The sea ice is only about, what do they say, like a meter thick or something like that? It's not thick at all. Whereas the land ice is incredibly thick. I don't know how thick it is. Miles maybe, just very thick. And that's what's melting. That's what's melting. Okay, that's the problem. When you think you see a tremendous amount of ice in these regions, you're not really seeing what you think you're seeing. You're seeing sea ice, which is always going to change with the seasons, and it's always going to be not thick, and it's not a good indicator. What is a good indicator is the land ice, which has year after year after year been getting less and less and less and less. And in fact, what Vice did is they went with scientists to fly over it, and the scientists explained how everything works and explained how indeed climate change is happening and indeed this stuff is melting fast. And then they also took a boat to the land ice specifically, and when you go and look at the land ice, it melts right in front of your eyes. Thick glaciers that just break off right in front of you, and you're like, oh shit. When they measure the water temperature in those areas, they're like, this is unseasonably warm. Virtually every year they say that. So, dude, you just don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. There's no other way to put it. You are flying in the face of what the science is saying. In other words, you're doing the opposite of Galileo, even though you refer to yourself in that analogy as Galileo.